Have you ever wondered how the T-Rex in a Jurassic Park Premium works? Well, in this video, let's take a look at the mechanics to see how the magic is made. Now that we are at the bench, we are sitting with our T-Rex test fixture. So this is essentially just a back panel from a Jurassic Park Premium, and we have some electronics bolted to it, like a node board. We have another lamp board back here, but other than that, the rest of it is exactly how it would be in your game. On the left, we have a Spike 2 kind of runtime environment, and this allows us to be able to use the diagnostic functions on the device. With the T-Rex assembly, we have 2 coils and we have 2 motors. There's one motor that is responsible for horizontal movement, and there's one motor that is responsible for vertical movement. The horizontal movement is a stepper motor, and the vertical movement is a geared DC motor. So I'll flip the unit around here, and this is what the back of your Jurassic Park, or any one that you might play in an arcade, looks like, minus this lamp board here. Let's look at each part of the T-Rex assembly. So starting at the top, we have our stepper motor under this heat shield here. Directly to the right here is the stepper motor controller board. This is what drives the stepper motor. Underneath that, down here, is our serial motor driver board, which controls this geared motor right here. This driver board is to allow the motor to spin clockwise and counterclockwise, so the T-Rex can move up and down. So now that we have a basic overview of the 2 major systems, let's see how these function in the test menu. Our test bed here is just like your pinball game, just compact and without a playfield. So I've got menu buttons here, like would be on your coin door. So to get into the movement tests, we are going to go into our diagnostic menu here, and let us work the horizontal test first. So the T-Rex, she just raised herself to the upper position and then went left, came back, found home, went right, came back, found home, and then swung left and right. So now on the screen here, we have a representation of switch number 68, which means about center. So when we move the T-Rex to the left, to the right, you'll see that that switch will be struck, and that is kind of how the stepper motor knows once it's reached a center reference point. A stepper motor in software, it knows, let's use an arbitrary number, we need to step 60 steps to the left, and it's going to find that center switch and go, okay, 60 steps this way. And then in software, it might be called to go right again. So it knows it needs to go 60 steps to find home, and then another 60 steps to find its rightmost travel. So now that we've seen what horizontal movement looks like from the front, let's flip the back panel around so we can see what that mechanism looks like from behind. When the cam turns, there's a point on the cam that makes contact with this micro switch here, and that is our home or our reference center point when the mechanism is called to move left and right. I have a totally undressed T-Rex assembly here. So this is the entire assembly without any of its stage dressing, right? The actual model. And this is a good view of the linkage in the armature that actually turns the T-Rex left and right. Give you a bottom view as well. So as it moves, the output shaft cam pushes on this drive arm, which then articulates the entire neck. All right, now that we've seen the horizontal movement, let's take a look at vertical movement. So there's the T-Rex again centering itself. It is bringing it into plane, as we see here on this LCD screen. Now that we're in this test, we have representations of each vertical position that the T-Rex can be called into. So you've got your lowest position. This is the position the T-Rex will take when you're starting like T-Rex multi-ball or a T-Rex encounter, where she'll come down and open her mouth and grab the ball, but then it can come up to a middle position and a top position. So this is all done using a geared DC motor, and it is positioned with 3 micro switches, as we see here. Let's flip it around and you can see how that is done. So now that we've got the test fixture turned around, let's refamiliarize ourselves with the vertical movement equipment. We have our serial motor driver board down here. We've got the motor that it drives here. We've got our output cam and then 3 micro switches here. And then the driving rod that rotates the T-Rex up and down. So when we call the T-Rex to move, the motor will spin until it stops each of these limit switches, one being down, one being the middle position, and one being the upper position. So as I mentioned in the beginning, where we familiarized ourselves with the equipment, we're using a serial motor driver board to run the T-Rex motor clockwise and counterclockwise. This allows the motor to be reversed, so it can reach each of those 3 positions. If you weren't using a driver board that allowed for clockwise or counterclockwise rotation, you would be forced to have a motor that only spins in one of those directions. So this allows it to reach or change those positions a lot more elegantly than a single direction motor. Here we have some action of the motor output here. So we've got the T-Rex in her lowest position, the center position, and the upper position. So if you notice, each time the motor stops, it is resting on the micro switch that correlates with that stopping position. And this is how the game knows once the T-Rex has reached each of those positions. You can see here's that driving rod. This is what is attached to the cam on the motor. So when the motor changes position, the T-Rex will raise up and down. In some cases, it might be necessary to adjust the height of the T-Rex. When the T-Rex needs to catch the ball, the jaw needs to be just above the ramp. So how might you do that? There's a small amount of adjustability here on this motor plate. If we were to loosen these nuts, there's a U-channel cut into this plate, which allows us to be able to grab the motor and position that higher or lower. Since the T-Rex pivot is fixed, a slight amount of movement up or down here will change the maximum up and down position, vertical position of the T-Rex's head. So if you ever needed to adjust the jaw of the T-Rex a little closer, or maybe a little bit further up from the ramp, those adjustments would be done using these nuts here. So now that we've looked at the vertical and horizontal movement, we can look at the opening and closing of the jaw and the catching of the ball. So let's talk about the opening and closing of the jaw. That is done by a small solenoid inside the head. When the solenoid is energized, it will attract this plunger here that is attached to this sled. There's 2 pins on either side of the sled that are attached to the jaw. When the coil energizes and the plunger for the sled is energized, it pushes the top of the jaw forward and levers it open. And then the spring on the plunger against the solenoid will force it back to a closed state when the solenoid is no longer energized. So we can simulate the solenoid being energized here. When we look inside the jaw, we can see that there's a relay coil that acts as a magnet. Spoiler alert, in Jurassic Park Premium, when you start some of the T-Rex events, the T-Rex will be lowered down with the jaw open, and when you shoot up the ramp, this magnet inside will be energized, waiting for the ball. You shoot the ball up the ramp and into the mouth, and the magnet will catch the ball. Then the T-Rex assembly can close the jaw. When the jaw is closed, the ball is actually captive. When you get some of the fun chomping animations, the magnet will energize, which will allow the jaw to open and close to make it look like the T-Rex is chomping on the ball. The last thing we have inside the T-Rex's jaw is an optosensor. The optos allow the game to know when there is something in the T-Rex's mouth. With the jaw closed, the beam from the transmitter mates up with the receiver. The game knows that the jaw is now closed with nothing in it. When the jaw opens, it will actually break that beam, but the game, does know that the jaw is open. At that point, if we have a ball inside and the jaw is closed, the beam is now broken, so the game knows that the T-Rex does have something in its mouth. So now let's take a look at the T-Rex assembly when the playfield is in its forward service position, or how you would most likely service your T-Rex assembly. I have the lockdown bar and the glass removed from the pinball game, so to access, we will lift up the playfield, pull it forward, and rest it on the service rails. And from this angle here, while a bit cramped, you have access to every portion of what we were looking at on our test fixture. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at one of the most intricate assemblies we've put into a pinball game, and thank you for watching another video from Stern Tech School.